Hi, I'm Josh Curving, and welcome to another Death Battle prediction video. But first, Tracer versus Scout. The battle pretty much went as expected. I'm a bit surprised how much they actually gave for speed calculations for Tracer, even though they did kind of downplay the feat on its own. Ultimately, there's not too much to talk about in terms of the research because there wasn't too much to do. Team Fortress isn't a particularly narrative-heavy game with a whole ton of feats, and Overwatch is way too young to have all that many feats, so it was pretty easy just going over everything. Overall, the animation was pretty good. It actually felt a bit short, especially for a Torian animation. Usually his animations are in like the 7-minute range, but this one actually really did feel short. The voice acting was spot on. At first, it wasn't quite there, but it quickly got there. I was a bit surprised that they did have the pulse bomb twice, which usually they just use the one ultimate move and that's it. Though I will say Scout easily had the best moment in the fight, which is when he had the bonk atomic soda and was just walking through her attacks. Overall, there's not really too much to say. So moving on to Ken versus Terry. I really feel like someone must have scuffed Ben's shoes at a Street Fighter tourney or something like that, because he seems to really fucking hate Street Fighter. Just the stats on this one, it's another one of those ones where it's like, they seem kind of similar when you look at them, but then you actually look at the stats and it's one-sided as all fuck. In this case, you have... I'll even go into two different categories for this, because you could do what Death Battle is likely to do, which is judging them entirely on their own feats. In which case you have Ken, who created a tornado along with Ryu, and if you split the force required to do so in half, it's like a building level feat. But then if you compare that to Terry, with one of it was like Buster Geyser, or one of his moves, he completely destroyed the building of a roof. Which someone did the math on the difference between those two calculations, and Terry's ends up being 1,500 times more. As in, if we don't use any scaling at all, which Death Battle is likely to not use scaling, then Terry is already 1,500 times stronger and more durable. Their speeds are actually comparable, but again, with that much of a stat gap, it doesn't end up mattering. But then if you start bringing in scaling to try to help Ken out a bit, you could say that he scales to, say, Ryu or Chun-Li. Even scaling to Ryu is pretty questionable, as is scaling to anyone like Akuma or M. Bison. And no, I won't talk about that thing in the cartoon where Ken beat Akuma by throwing mud at him. That was just silly. But if we bring in scaling, then Ken starts reaching up to city level and Mach 1,200, which is fairly good, because that would be going with M. Bison's satellite laser interception and Chun-Li's feat of destroying that entire forest or something like that before Street Fighter 4. However, if you're going to do scaling, you have to do it for both sides, and Terry scales to a lot of characters. He beats characters like Krauser, Geese, and one of the big problems with this fight is that King of Fighters has a very, very different method with its characters. Some of them are gods and can destroy countries. One of them very casually destroyed an entire city block just because. And then you have characters like Elizabeth who have control over light and can move in tandem with it. And because it is stated to be light and it acts like light, she actually is a relativistic character. And she has openly said that she would have to use, like, every ounce of her power to even have a chance against Terry. And then there's basically just plenty of characters who, like, I think the final result for Terry's stats with scaling is like continent level relativistic. So it makes an even bigger gap between the stats. So there's very little point in getting into their experience or their attacks or anything like that, because just with that level of stat difference, it doesn't matter. Like, I could go into how Ken settled down with his wife and like started having a family, and that took him out of practice, which is very openly stated, and that never happened with Terry. Even in I believe it was called Mark of the Wolves, which takes place like 10 years after King of Fighters and Fatal Fury, where all of Terry's friends have retired, but he's the only one still fighting. But just, there's not too much point getting into anything else. With stats like that, it makes for a pretty open and shut case. The only way that I could see Death Battle spinning it to Ken's favor is if they ignore any calculations, so it's basically just their movesets against each other, and if they include, like, Violent Ken, or Mean Ken, or whatever the fuck they call it, and then they somehow give Ken the Satsui no Hado, which he's never been shown to use the Raging Demon or anything, but they could argue he might be able to. Like I said, it would take a ridiculous amount of spinning in order to make it even possibly Ken's win. Which is saddening, because they've been really downplaying Street Fighter a lot. So it just kind of sucks to see them throw another Street Fighter character against someone that they have literally no chance of beating. But the animation might be good. I mean, it is done by the same guy who did Sonya versus Cammy. So I'm hoping that it's an improvement over that. And as far as I know, the next fight as well will be a 2D fight. So I guess we will see then. And then I guess have a good one, guys, and I will see you after the next one.